If you have consistently late periods, does it make it harder for you to fall pregnant? Unfortunately, yes it does. Hello lovelies, welcome to another one of my videos in which we'll be talking about late periods and what their impact are on your ability to fall pregnant and what the reason is for having late periods. A light period basically means that the cycle before your endometrial lining wasn't very thick. Your endometrial lining is the lining of your uterus, there where an egg is supposed to implant. So in the first half of our cycle, under the influence of estrogen, the lining is being built. And then in the second half of our cycle, progesterone maintains and further thickens that endometrial lining. It's really important for a healthy pregnancy and for this little egg to nest into a lush, thick lining, as you can imagine, because that lining will be a nice cushioning for a starting pregnancy and allow that pregnancy to be nourished properly. So you can imagine if your endometrial lining is too thin, that either prevents an egg to implant at all or for implantation to fail. This can sometimes, unfortunately, lead to what is referred to as chemical pregnancies. Now, I really hate that term because there's nothing chemical about a chemical pregnancy, but the reason they call it this way is that you will have a positive pregnancy test followed by a negative pregnancy test, or your period basically showing up at the expected time. That means that there was an attempt to implantation, but it failed. Now, as a side note, there's another reason for failed implantation, and I find that it's often metal toxicity, but there's another video on that topic, and I will make sure to link it in the cards up here and in the description down below. So in order for us to know what a light period is, we need to understand what a healthy period looks like, because then it's quite easy to spot any range, right? Super light periods or just like, this isn't great. So a healthy period is 4 days of a full flow. It starts with a proper flow. It may be heavy, medium is okay, but we don't want any stuttering, so no spotting before. Then we don't want any spotting afterwards either. Then ideally you'd have 2 heavy days and maybe 2 medium days, or 1 heavy, 2 medium, 1 light, that kind of idea. If you have 4 days of a medium period, that's really fine too. But if you have a 1 day of heavy and then 3 days of light or 2 days of light, that really makes me start to wonder. Or 2 days medium, 1 day light, 1 day spotting, that is definitely too light. And an extreme version would be 2 days of a light period and then 1 day of spotting, for example. And it is not uncommon for women to have this. As I said, if you have a late period, that's a reflection of your previous cycle, your endometrial lining having been too thin. Now, if you have 1 light period, that's really not an issue. It becomes an issue if you see that you have a pattern of light periods, because that gives you an indication that usually your endometrial lining will be too thin. Now, I do get asked, what is too thin? Ideally, you would have an endometrial lining in your luteal phase that is about 8 millimeters or thicker. 9 to 10 millimeters has actually shown that pregnancy outcomes are really good, and anything that is 6 or less make your chances really, really slim. Now the question is, of course, what makes your endometrial lining so thin? I kind of gave it away by explaining that estrogen in the first half of your cycle builds your lining and progesterone maintains it in the second half. So if either of these 2 hormones are low or both are low, that will give you a thin lining. You can have low progesterone relatively to estrogen if you have estrogen dominance. I've got videos on that topic. You can have absolute low progesterone, perhaps due to ongoing stress. And if you have low overall hormones, so both estrogen and low progesterone, this could be a result of long-term stress. It could be the result of having used synthetic hormones in the past, such as contraceptives or steroids or IVF drugs. And it's also possible for you to have a nutrient deficiency, and it could even be a sign that you are menopausal or premenopausal. Now, of course, you can have blood tests run for estrogen and progesterone. I did a video on that topic 2 weeks ago, but it's even possible for you to pick up on signs and patterns in your fertility charts on whether you have low progesterone or low estrogen or both. This is especially useful if perhaps you've already run blood tests and everything seems to be within range, but you can tell from your charts that something is up. Now, if you want to learn how to spot these patterns and these signs, you can sign up to my chart interpretation course, which is now live, and I'm actually still running the early bird offer, which gives you a discount to 50 euros for that first bundle instead of 85. And in that first bundle, we're covering estrogen dominance, low progesterone, ideal charts, because we're interested in that, and low overall hormones or signs and symptoms of menopause, early menopause, or premature ovarian failure. There are also a couple of things that you can do supplement-wise to improve the thickness of your lining. And I already mentioned that vitamin D deficiency can be an issue. So make sure that your vitamin D levels are, spot on. Obviously, in summer, if you're getting more sunshine, your vitamin D levels may be okay. But then in winter, you may have issues. So if you've noticed having better periods in summer than in winter, then that is a big hint that it is a vitamin D issue. Also, supplementing with vitamin E has shown in research that it thickens endometrial lining. And you may have heard of L-arginine, which improves the blood circulation of your pelvis, so also of the endometrial lining. So that has also helped a lot of women with light periods, but also those that have short periods that are very sticky and dark and clotty. To improve blood circulation in that area, it's also useful to do something like a fertility massage or to make sure that you do exercises. As mentioned, it is useful to take these supplements, but don't over focus on that and assume that's what's going to fix it when there's potentially an underlying hormonal imbalance. Now, if you want to learn more about hormone imbalance and how you can fix it naturally, make sure to click on the playlist on your screen right now. And in the meantime, see you in the next video. Bye!